כי להם מלכות השמיים.
אשריכם. אשרי הרעבים והצמאים.
A hearty shalom to all of you. Jeffrey Seif here, and I am pleased, thrilled in fact, to welcome you to another edition of Zola Levitt Presents. What are we presenting? A story on Jesus. We call him Yeshua from the Hebrew, Jesus in the English. I don't care what you call him, I just care that you get to know him. And to that end, we go now to the Sea of Galilee, an area's roundabout to look at the greatest story ever told.
And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom. Seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain, and his disciples came unto him. And he taught them, saying,
אשרי עניי הרוח, כי להם מלכות השמיים. אשרי האבלים, כי הם ינוחמו. אשרי הענבים, כי הם ירשו את הארץ. אשרי הרעבים והצמאים לצדק, כי הם ישבעו. אשרי הרחמנים, כי הם ירוחמו. אשרי ברי הלבב, כי הם יראו את אלוהים. אשרי רודפי השלום, כי בני אלוהים יקראו. אשרי הנרדפים בגלל הצדק, כי להם מלכות השמיים. אשריכם, אם יחרפו ויגדפו וירדפו אתכם, ויעלילו עליכם בגללי. שמחו וגילו, כי שכרכם רב בשמיים. הרי כך רדפו את הנביאים שהיו לפניכם.
His name is Yeshua. It's a Hebrew name that comes from a Hebrew verb meaning to save, to deliver, or to redeem. And if there ever was a person who lived up to their name, this was that person. Word of his doing just that, helping, healing, making whole, delivering. Word of all that went out in advance of him, with the net result that thousands thronged to him. Matthew tells us in chapter 4, verses 23 through 5, that they came. People heard that he healed, and they were despairing, they were vexed, perplexed, they needed some help, and they heard that he delivered. And he did deliver, not just words but deeds, but because he was kindly disposed toward them, because they benefited by virtue of their brief association with them, they were a mind to come to this place and hear what he had to say. And what is this place? Well, there's the Galilee on one side, the mount where the so-called Sermon of the Mount was transacted on the other. Personally, the term Sermon on the Mount doesn't abide with me, in part because it just sounds so boring, like Sermon on the Mount, as if Jesus is there lecturing people. Actually, I prefer Torah from the top. And the word Torah is a Hebrew word for teaching. There, Yeshua went up to the mountain and he opened his mouth, and I think we do well to begin to consider exactly what he had to say. Let me ask you a question. Inasmuch as Yeshua, Jesus, opened up his mouth to speak to them, can you be at a place in your life, yes, your very, very, very busy life, where you can open up your heart to listen deeply, not to me, but to what the Lord might be saying to you as you examine with me the essence and the substance of what it means to be authentically Christian or Christ-like in this world. The reason why I say that is because churches can and do, and understandably so, develop various creeds. But here we hear from the boss himself about what it means to be Christian. I've often said that if you were on an ocean liner and you just opened up the Bible and cut out Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, stuffed it in a bottle, put a cork on it, and threw it overboard, and if someone on some desert island somewhere who was marooned on a beach saw this bottle sweep onto the shore and opened it up, and if they read it, if they knew nothing about Jesus beforehand, just by reading this so-called Sermon on the Mount and coming to terms with it, they could understand what it means to be essentially a follower of Jesus. It's an important story, this so-called Sermon on the Mount. I'm glad that you've opted to go on the journey with me, if for but a half hour, to begin to explore what Jesus said. I honestly believe that you'll be better by virtue of so doing, and I want to thank you for taking the time and investing the energies to want to sit down and hear what Jesus has to say as I speak to you from this place, the place of the once great Sermon on the Mount.
אשרי הרחמנים.
Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek, the merciful, the pure in heart. On a bleak winter's day, a helpless man sits at the city gate, shivering in the bitter cold. One by one they pass him, this wretched soul, this outcast. And then from the shadows steps one whose heart is pure and whose cloak is warm. Rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven.
What did the Lord say when He opened up the Sermon on the Mount? He goes on record with, and I quote, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek." I've asked myself on more than one occasion, pray tell, what's the blessing in being all miserable? Well, first of all, by way of response, there's not a whole lot of blessing in being miserable. The point here is that what we can be blessed about is the fact that the poor are going to be rewarded, the meek are going to inherit. The point is we can be blessed because there's a blessing that's coming, because if we come God's way, He comes our way. He delivers us, He helps us, He lifts people up out of dire straits. And it's for that reason that we can be blessed. That's Jesus' point, if I understand Him correctly. I think the word blessed, by the way, can somewhat obscure the point. The reason why I say that is the blessed expression in the English Bible comes by way of the Greek makarios, which itself is better rendered from the Hebrew ashrei, which means not blessed in some religious sense, but it's the word happy. Happy are the poor, happy are the disenfranchised. Not because there's great happiness in being poor and disenfranchised, but when we're born anew, we're born of the Son, we become a king's relative, and there are blessings. He's not going to leave us just wrapped around the axle. That's His point. And by the way, the point that Jesus makes in the opening here in the Sermon on the Mount is very much akin to a point He makes in Psalm chapter 1, which I'm going to show you right now. "Blessed is the man," says the psalmist, "who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor who stands in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord." You might have heard that before. In the Hebrew, it begins like the Sermon on the Mount. Ashrei ha'ish. Happy is the man who walks with the Lord, who doesn't associate with the unscrupulous. And why can this person be happy? Oh, hear this. It is such a good word, especially for today. The psalmist says this person is like a tree planted by rivers of water that brings forth fruit in its season. He describes as well that it takes roots deep under the ground. Above ground, there can be lack of rain, there can be scorching heat, there can be difficulty. But this man whose delight is in the Lord and His ways and His people, he is connected to a source that gives him nourishment even if it's not available in the general environment. The reason why I say that, and the reason why I think the Lord said this, is because people can find themselves bested by circumstances. It surely was the case in Jesus' day, and today as well. Goodness, we inhabit a world that's racked by all kinds of problems. That's the bad news. But this is the good news. And the good news, according to Yeshua, Jesus here in the Sermon on the Mount, is that God's got a good plan for you. That's the word of the Psalms as well, that if we walk with God, if we take Him seriously, then similarly, He is going to walk with us and provide for us, difficulties in life notwithstanding. This is, in effect, the good news. And by the way, the term good news in Hebrew, besorah, sounds like a religious term, the good news. Besorah comes from the Hebrew basar, which means flesh. That is to say, substance. It's not just flowery rhetoric. In the real world, according to the text, there's a real God, and He's really interested in taking care of you.
For insightful perspectives of Israel and Bible prophecy, ask for our free monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter. When you call, be sure to ask for our free catalog with the latest videos, books, and music. Our correspondence course, the Institute for Jewish Christian Studies, includes reading packets, teaching CDs, and mail-in tests. You may want to join us on an upcoming tour of Israel or Petra, or cruise the Mediterranean visiting Greece and Ephesus. Please contact us for more information.
I don't know what you're thinking and feeling in life, and how could I? But I know this, that if you'd go with me there to the land of Jesus, just being there has a way of clearing the air, giving you a new head, filling you with inspiration and information to help you meet the troubles of the day. Oh, that you would meet the one who helps solve the troubles of the day. The late Zola Levitt and Dr. Tom McCall wrote, "The prophesied Messiah," that you might come to know Him in the mind and in the heart. Oh goodness, this book is chock full of information to help you do just that. We have a bookmark too we're pleased to send along with. There's more information later on coming in that regard. And if you want information, if you just love looking at Jesus from a Jewish perspective, then why don't you contact our ministry? Zola Levitt Presents at www.levitt.com. We have a magazine that's free for you and more. If you would but ask, then you will receive, to quote Jesus. www.levitt.com or call 1-800-WONDERS. And off we go back now to the land of Jesus.
אתם מלח הארץ, ואם תאבד למלח מליחותו, כיצד תוחזר לו? אין לא יצלח עוד לשום דבר, כי אם להשליחו החוצה מרמס לרגלי הבריות להיות.
You are the light of the world. A lamp is not lit to be placed under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
At the base of the Mount of Olives, there's a garden called Gethsemane in Hebrew, Gethsemane. You might recall Yeshua, Jesus, went there to pray, and he sweat blood that last night, that fateful night. It's interesting, it seems to me, that shemen, or oil, is produced by getting the olives together and putting them under pressure. And this oil is extracted that's then used to make or in Hebrew, or is light. Light factors in various ways in the New Testament story. There are maidens that carry the light to pierce the darkness. In the passage that I want to consider with you in this segment, Jesus says to his Talmidim, to his disciples, quote, "You are the light of the world." He doesn't just say that, he says similarly in Matthew chapter 5 that you are melach haaretz, you are the salt of the earth. What does the Lord mean when he tells the disciples that they're light, that they're salt? It's a reasonable question. That this comes on the heels of Jesus talking about you're going to experience persecution, reviling, difficulties, so forth and so on. It's not a very good story, but to follow up and say, listen, you're the light of the world. It's an interesting juxtaposition of themes, it seems to me. And what I gather from it is that the suffering, the trials that we can experience produce something in us that enable others to see something in us, and thus to then have hope and direction through us. Why do I say that? Well, I didn't say it. John Wesley, in his own way, says, if you set yourself on fire, other people will come to see you burn. You know, I'm not a Buddhist monk opting for that kind of business, but the point is that if you're really going through the thick of it, and you keep your game face on, your virtue up, your faith, hope, your love, even amidst the turbulence of trying times, others are going to come and take a deep look at you and say, boy, what does that person have? There's some worth that person possesses. The reason why I mention that, and this is lost to moderns, when Jesus tells his disciples that you were the salt of the earth, he's talking about worth. The reason why I say that is the term for salt is where you get the term salary from, though that's lost to moderns. Do you ever hear the old expression, quote, so-and-so is worth their weight in salt? They used to divvy out payments to Roman soldiers in increments of salt. Again, that doesn't make sense to moderns, but look it up if you think I'm lying. To say that you are the salt of the earth underscores that you have a particular kind of worth, even if you feel worthless. I mention that because you can go through all sorts of trials and you're just spent through it all. After describing that the disciples are going to be spent accordingly, for Jesus to follow and say, hey, listen, you're the salt of the earth. You're the thing that preserves and gives value. You're the light of the world, that you give direction. Others see hope and they see me through you. Friends here from the Galilee, let me encourage you to walk with the Lord even through difficulties, because the Lord has a way of working through it for his own good purposes, for his own good pleasure.
And now Messianic music artist Ted Pierce sings about the light of the world.
Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. Walk in the light. Walk in the light. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. Walk in the light of the Lord. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. Walk in the light. Walk in the light. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. Walk in the light of the Lord. The haughty man is humbled, the lofty one brought low, for the Lord alone will be exalted in that day, when every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Yeshua is the Lord, unto the glory of God. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. walk in the light, walk in the light. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light, walk in the light of the Lord. We're gonna walk in the light, walk in the light. We're gonna walk, 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 walk in the light, walk in the light. Yeah, hey, hey, of Jacob, let us walk in the light, walk in the light, walk in the light. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light, walk in the light of the Lord. We're gonna walk in the light of the Lord. Come on, walk in the light of the Lord.
I remember like it was yesterday when Ted told me that he felt the Lord calling him into ministry. And now he travels all over the country and all over the world sharing about Jesus. It began with him having a look at what Jesus was saying and considering the implications for his own life. I hope you do that. As you might well imagine, the early disciples heard Jesus teach the Sermon on the Mount and other teachings, and they would ponder amongst themselves and wrestle with what he was saying and what the personal implications were for them. And now off we go to hear from the late Zola Levitt as he reflects on that and more as he looks at the Sermon on the Mount.
The disciple Matthew, with his friends, reflected upon the magnificent sermon that has so astonished them here upon the Mount of Beatitudes.
אשרי עניי הרוח, כי להם מלכות השמיים.
אשרי הבוכים והאבלים, כי הם ינוחמו.
אשרי הצנועים והענבים, כי העולם כולו שייך להם.
אשרי הרעבים וצמאים לצדקה, כי הם ישבעו.
אשרי האדיבים והרחמנים, כי האלוהים יגלה כלפיהם רחמים.
אשרי ברי לבב, כי הם יחזו את האלוהים.
Our location this morning is northwest of the Sea of Galilee, quite close to Capernaum in the mountains. We saw Matthew writing the sermon and reading what he had written, and we've come to the spot of the Sermon on the Mount to take a look at it. You know, it's Old Covenant principles raised to kingdom proportions. Jesus doesn't depart from the Old Testament. The Jewish law, even today, is the only international law. It was 1,500 years old in Jesus' time and 3,500 years old now. When I say international law, I mean that if I have a dispute with a Jewish neighbor and I go to a rabbi in Dallas, I will get the same judgment as I would get in New York or in Peking or in Johannesburg or anywhere in the world, because all of the rabbis would consult the same law. And it is the law, well, it's been added to with commentaries and so on, but the principles of it, the law in Jesus' time. He did not depart from it.
I believe that Zola Levitt was absolutely correct in saying, in observing that Jesus didn't come to abolish things Jewish as much as to build on top of them. It bothers me personally that so many have not gotten that message, and thus in the world today, Jesus is being represented as anti-Jewish, when truth be known, for my money, with the literal reading of the biblical text, that he was the greatest Jew that ever lived. and would that you would come to know him in a way that's more than just informational. And I hope that you find the information good as we put a new view on this world's greatest Jew. The Jew being Jesus, and the new view being looking at him in the context of his own people and culture. Jesus wasn't anti-Jewish, he was for Jews. And irrespective of your sin and circumstance, Jesus isn't against you, he's for you. But in order to get him working on your behalf, what you have to do is come clean on what you're doing in your own behalf. And that said, in considering any treatment of Jesus, I think it's important to remind that the way people really get to know him isn't by virtue of the show. You don't get to know through the show, you get to know Jesus on your knees. And it begins with repentance. Lord, forgive me for my sins. And believe me, friends, I've had to do that personally on more than one occasion. But for me, it all began many years ago when someone showed me the Bible, and the eyes of my heart were opened, and I repented, and I asked him to come into my heart. And oh, for the love of God, it was a fantastic new beginning. And that, friend, is a new beginning for you. I'm glad to be able to contribute to your understanding of Jesus. Thank you. This is but the first of an 8-part treatment of Jesus, Sar Shalom, Prince of Peace. And may you experience that peace yourself in the process. Before we go, as we go, let me say what we always say when we go. Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Our offer on this program, The Prophesied Messiah, written by Zola Levitt and Dr. Thomas S. McCall. This special book contains the major prophecies of the Messiah, along with illustrations and Holy Land maps. It's extremely important that we be able to prove the coming of Messiah from the Old Testament Scripture, and this book will serve well in providing you with the evidence. Along with the book, you'll receive a free bookmark listing many of the scriptures about the coming of Messiah. Call 1-800-WONDERS and ask for the Prophesied Messiah. Also, please call toll-free or write to receive our monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter. It's absolutely free and contains insightful article and news commentary with a refreshing perspective you won't get from the mainstream media. The Levitt Letter is also available at levitt.com, along with current and archive TV programs, our national airing schedule, and much more. Please remember, Zola Levitt Ministries depends on tax-deductible donations from viewers like you.
או שיהיה מסור לאחד,
כי להם מלכות השמיים.
אשריכם. אשרי הרעבים והעניים.
This has been a paid program brought to you by Zola Levitt Ministries.